I am Caleb, and this is my story. The dust of Kadesh Barnea still clings to my sandals when I close my eyes at night, even now, so many years later. I can still smell the wild broom bushes baking in the desert heat, still hear the bleating of 10,000 sheep drifting across the camp at dusk, still feel the particular silence that falls over a nation waiting to be told what comes next. I was a young man then, son of Jephunneh, of the tribe of Judah. I had grown up on the stories my father told, of Abraham, of the promise, of a land flowing with milk and honey that God swore to give us. I had grown up, too, on the newer stories, the ones I had lived myself. The 10 plagues breaking Pharaoh's pride like a reed in the wind, the sea splitting into 2 walls of water while we walked through on dry ground with our children in our arms, the fire that lit the mountain and the voice that shook it. I had seen the glory of the Lord myself. I was not guessing at what God could do. I had watched him do it. So when Moses gathered the leaders of the 12 tribes and told us the Lord had commanded him to send men to spy out the land of Canaan, 1 leader from each tribe, and my name was called for Judah, my chest tightened with something between terror and joy. 40 days. 40 days to walk the land God had promised my grandfather's grandfather. 40 days to see with my own eyes what I had only heard sung about around cook fires since I was a boy on my mother's knee. We set out from the wilderness of Paran, 12 of us, and among them was a man named Hoshea, whom Moses had begun calling Joshua, the Lord saves. He was from Ephraim, quiet, steady, the kind of man whose eyes missed nothing. We did not know yet how tightly our lives would be bound together. We only knew we were walking north, into the unknown, carrying the hopes of an entire nation on our backs like water skins. The land itself nearly undid me before the people in it ever could. We climbed through the Negev first, dry and cracked, the kind of ground that makes a man grateful for every green thing he sees after it. Then, almost without warning, the hills opened up into something I had no words for. Terraces heavy with grapevines climbed the slopes like green stairways to heaven. Fig trees dropped their fruit onto soft grass. Pomegranate orchards blazed red against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. I remember standing at the edge of a barley field near Hebron, wind moving through the stalks like a slow-breathing animal, and feeling tears come to my eyes before I even understood why. It's real, I kept thinking. It was never just a story. It's real, and it's ours. But Hebron was also where I first saw them. We had come near the city, ancient even then, built, they said, 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. And I watched from a hillside as men walked its gates. Men the size of which I had never seen, the sons of Anak. Even from a distance, my hands went cold. I am not a small man. I had fought. I had swung a sword and driven a plow and carried grown rams over my shoulders. But watching those men move through the gate, I understood for the first time what it might feel like to be a grasshopper looking up at giants. I will not pretend the fear did not touch me. It did. It sat in my stomach like a stone all that night as we camped in the hills above the valley of Eshcol, and I lay awake listening to the wind and asking myself the same question over and over in the dark. Is the God who split the sea too small for this? I already knew the answer. I had simply forgotten, for one long night, to believe it. In the morning we cut a single cluster of grapes from the valley vines, so heavy that 2 men had to carry it slung on a pole between their shoulders. along with pomegranates and figs, proof of the land's abundance that no report could argue away. We turned south again, 40 days of walking behind us, and every step toward the camp, I felt the weight of what I carried. Not just fruit on a pole, truth. And I did not yet know how heavy truth could become when 10 other men decided not to carry it with me. The whole congregation gathered at Kadesh when we returned. Every tribe, every family, faces upturned and hungry for news. Children pushed to the front by mothers who had waited 40 days without knowing if their husbands and brothers would come home at all. Moses and Aaron stood before us. I remember Moses' eyes, how they searched our faces before we had said a single word, as though he already sensed which way the wind was about to blow. The other 10 spoke first. "We came to the land where you sent us," they said, "and it truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit." A pause. I felt it coming before it arrived, the way you feel a storm change the air. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong, the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. Something in the crowd shifted, a low murmur spreading through the tribes like fire catching in dry grass. Then it came, worse, the twisting of what our own eyes had seen into something monstrous. The land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. And we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. I felt Joshua's shoulder brush mine. I looked at him and saw my own fire mirrored back at me. Not fear, but something fiercer, something that could not stay silent while the promise of God was being buried under 10 men's terror. I stepped forward. I do not remember deciding to. My feet simply moved, and my voice, steadier than I expected, though my heart hammered against my ribs like a fist on a door, rose over the crowd. "Let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it." For one breath, I thought they might listen. I thought I saw it, a flicker of the old fire, the fire from the Red Sea, the fire from Sinai, catching again in a few faces near the front. Then the 10 spoke again, louder this time, and whatever flicker I had seen went out like a lamp in the wind. Fear is loud. I learned that day how loud fear can be, and how quickly it multiplies when it is fed instead of starved. "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we." The word spread through the camp like poison through a wound, and the whole congregation lifted their voices and wept that night. A sound I have never forgotten. 10,000 families weeping at once beneath a desert sky that had, 40 days earlier, watched us set out with such hope. By morning it had curdled into something worse than grief. It became rage. Why has the Lord brought us to this land, to fall by the sword, that our wives and children should become victims? They cried. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? I heard men saying that we should choose a new leader and go back to slavery, back to bricks without straw, back to a Pharaoh's whip, as though bondage remembered fondly was safer than freedom that required faith. I confess there was a moment, brief but real, when despair reached for me too. To stand in a sea of your own people, watching them choose fear over the God who parted an entire sea for them, is a loneliness I cannot fully describe. I understood in that moment something about the ache God himself must feel when his children forget him. It is not anger first, it is grief. Joshua and I tore our clothes. It was the only language large enough for what we felt. We turned to the whole congregation, and I heard my own voice break as I pleaded with them. The land we pass through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. The Lord is with us. I said it because I believed it with everything in me, not because the giants were small, but because God was not. The crowd's answer was to reach for stones. I remember the exact weight of that moment. Men bending for rocks, faces twisted with a fear so total it had become fury, and Joshua and I standing there with nothing between us and death but the will of God. I was not brave in that instant. I want to be honest about that. My body understood, even before my mind caught up, that stones do not care how much faith a man carries. And then the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of meeting before all the children of Israel. Every hand holding a stone went still. I have stood in the presence of God's glory more than once in my life, and I can tell you it does not resemble anything else in this world. It is not merely bright, it is weighty, the way silence before thunder is weighty, the way the sea going still before it splits is weighty. The whole camp fell to the ground. I did not hear every word the Lord spoke to Moses that day. I was one man among a fallen nation, my face pressed to the dust like everyone else's. But I heard enough. I heard that this generation, the ones who had seen his glory and his signs in Egypt and in the wilderness, and had tested him now these 10 times, would not see the land they refused to trust him for. 40 years, one for each day we had spied, a slow return to dust for the fear that had spread like plague through the camp. But then I heard my own name. My servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land where he went, and his descendants shall inherit it. I will not tell you I felt triumph in that moment. I felt something closer to trembling awe, and beneath it, a sorrow so deep it has never fully left me, because the very people I loved, my own kinsmen, would spend the rest of their lives wandering in circles beneath a sun that would watch them die one by one, all because they chose 10 men's fear over God's faithfulness. I grieved for them the way you grieve someone still breathing. What I learned in the dust at Kadesh has never left me. Faith is not the absence of giants. I saw the sons of Anak with my own eyes. I never denied their size, never pretended the walls were not high or the men were not strong. Faith was simply refusing to let the size of the giants determine the size of my God. The 10 spies and I looked at the same land, the same cities, the same terrifying men, and saw entirely different things, because we were not really looking at Canaan at all. We were looking at what we believed about the God who had promised it to us. I carried that different spirit through 40 more years of wandering, watching an entire generation. Men I had marched beside out of Egypt, men who had sung at the Red Sea, fall in the wilderness one grave at a time, while I grew old, waiting for a promise I never stopped believing. And when the day finally came, when I stood before Joshua, gray-bearded now, both of us the last of that generation still breathing, I was 85 years old, and I asked him for the very hill country where I had first seen the giants. As yet I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me. Now therefore, give me this mountain. They said no man could take Hebron from the sons of Anak. I had believed otherwise for 45 years. I was not about to stop now. If you are standing today before your own Anakim, before a fear so large it has convinced everyone around you to turn back, I want you to remember what I learned in the dust at Kadesh Barnea. The giants were real. My fear was real. But the God who parted the sea was more real than either one. Do not measure him by the size of what stands in front of you. Measure what stands in front of you by the size of him. I still believe God. Even now, I still believe him. If you have been blessed by this story, subscribe, like, and share it with a friend.